Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 and our Dare to Teach series. We're trying to define as best we can the integral teacher, and we turn now to the core value of peace. Now the assumption for us is that you've been working together with me at learnstrong.net excuse me, with two introductory lectures, and then that first group of core values: honesty, forgiveness, freedom, love, and then now the second core group of values, we've already dealt with justice and hope, as well as courage and joy. And now we turn to the last of all of these, the concept of peace. Now, I'm hoping, and several of you have commented on this, that these concepts seem to kind of be building on each other, and I like to think of them as symphonic because I think that's what they are. And a good number of you have pointed out to me how much fun it would be for us to sit in a room and to just talk through in dialogue, in conversation, each of these. We do the Dare to Teach Institute seminars, and I'll have more information on that coming, but you're absolutely right. It would be a lot of fun to be able to just sit and to discuss these. Unfortunately, this is kind of one-way communication, although with our Teachers Learning Journals, it's my hope that you're at least able to kind of give some thought for yourself about all of these things we're talking about. Now, I will make the argument that all of the 7 previous core values, as we just listed them, will now bring us to this conversation of peace. And it won't shock you, it can't shock you, that I'm going to define the idea of peace in possibly a little bit more different way, or broader definition than you might imagine. I'm going to say it this way right off the bat, that for the integral teacher, peace is energy conservation. We're not talking about some idea of solitude and quiet or any of that when we're talking about, no. First of all, we're classroom teachers. We know that kind of thing rarely happens. You know what I mean? It's just not going to happen at all. And you know, in the old days when they used to have the kindergartner kids lay down and take a nap, if you ever walked in, you never saw the kindergartner teacher taking a nap. No. What was he doing? What was she doing? What were they doing? They were planning the next order of chaos. So no, we're not defining peace in any kind of, you know, silly pie in the sky idea where we sit around and we do nothing. For most of us who have a lot of energy anyway, that would probably quickly become boring, which is why it's funny to track teachers on vacation. It's really hard for a lot of us to take vacation, isn't it? Why is that? Well, we're just so accustomed to the chaos of a classroom that, you know, we need the break, and we need to replenish our energy reservoirs. We're going to have more to say about that in a second. But the reality for us is that we love that. We love that energy release. We love the chaos of the classroom. Can we just say that out loud? So let's talk about what I mean when I talk about peace. Now, this is one of the famous word pictures of Room 303. I share this with every single group of students that I work with. And I've done it with 2 different word pictures. They both kind of work the same way. And I'm gonna work with the red gas can, but I can also do it with a milk carton, where I simply ask for you to imagine a red gas can, like the ones that, you know, you kind of see sitting on the outsides of Jeeps or whatever. Or you can think about this in terms of a milk carton with milk. You can actually do this with students with a milk carton as long as you have a big bucket so that you can perform the word picture operation. It's very simple. The gas inside of the gas can we're going to qualify as your energy, assuming that when you wake up in the morning from good sleep and you're virtually drug-free. That's a big part of it because we know the importance of sleep. We're going to get to it in a second to talk about it again. Your gas level in your can is completely filled up, and right away you begin to expend energy, and we will imagine the expenditure of that energy by somebody grabbing an ice pick and popping a hole in the side of your gas can. Let's say, for example, that, you know, you wake up in the morning and something goes wrong with, you know, a conversation that you have with your significant other. Bam, there goes a hole in the gas can. Now we start to excrete gas. Maybe if you're a mom or a dad, you've got, you know, children, and you got to go through this. No, I don't feel like going to school. And yes, you have to go to school because we have no way to. And it's like people just popping, just like somebody popping holes in the side of your gas can. You go through your day. All the way through your day. You're in the middle of conversation, the door opens, and there's your principal. I need to speak with you as soon as class is over or school is over. And that's like somebody just taking a big shotgun, just putting a hole in the side of your gas can. It cannot shock us that by the end of our day, we have virtually very little gas left for the drive home, if you get my drift of what we mean. Which is why when we arrive at home, often, We're already so exhausted, but we have a whole nother life often for many of us as teachers that we have to work with. Some of us as teachers even have a second job because we just frankly don't make enough money in our first job as teacher to be able to pay all the bills. And yet we continue, back to our conversation of joy in the last lecture, we continue to go ahead and do this thing called teaching. But boy, oh boy, the amount of energy expenditure is unbelievable. Now that's the word picture. Now from that word picture, there's several things that we will want to point out. First of all, level of gas in the morning is huge. There's a whole lot of research out there. You've noticed how I've stayed away from a whole lot of this data-driven kind of conversation because I want these talks to be more directly to the heart than just simply research-based. I think most everything I've been arguing is research-based. I think I have good reason to believe that and to argue that, but I've stayed away from it. But I will say this. It doesn't take much research to find out what now is being pointed out about the value of sleep, the importance of sleep. If we are not sleeping well as teachers, we are going to struggle because we're going to begin our day with our energy levels already being low, and we cannot do the job certainly effectively in the short term, but in the long term, this is one of the primary reasons that students will leave the class, that teachers will leave the classroom. Quite frankly, it is. When I have conversations with very early new teachers, when I sit down with them, one of the first things I'll always point out to them is this thing of energy loss. It is going to demand energies of you you can't even believe. No way, no how. And because that's the case, you got to have good sleep. So that's job one. Now about these holes that are getting popped in the side of the can, we can point out right away a couple of things. First of all, they're going to happen. So we can't be shocked. I mean, back to our earlier conversation about, why did this happen for me, not to me. When bad stuff happens in a classroom and energy expenditure happens, we know that it's coming. It's an inevitability, right? It is, if you will, it's the necessary evil of the classroom, if we can kind of use that language, right? That is to say, to teach well, we have to recognize we're going to expend a lot of energy. It's going to happen. The way I like to say it using my word picture of the gas can is we're going to bleed energy. It's just a matter of time. It is coming. It is inevitable. So if we know it's coming and it's inevitable, we now have to do a little bit of study of what these holes in the side of our gas can are really about, because there's two kinds. There's obviously the holes of the stuff that we can control, and then there's the holes of the stuff that we can't control, right? Now, we got to think about this, because there's a lot of stuff that happens in our day as teachers that, quite frankly, we could control it if and only if we are disciplined, our next topic, by the way, right? Intentional, 2 topics away. And that idea of discipline and intentionality is going to help us tremendously. The better planned we are, the better we are able to control these holes in the side of our gas can with our ice pick, okay? So that for us is huge. So right away we're going to ask about any of the energy expenditure losses, and I really do recommend this in your teacher's learning journal. Sit down and make a study in your classroom for 2 weeks, and I think you got to look at it for 10 days of teaching. For 2 weeks, and every day analyze at the end of the day the ice pick in the side of the can. Today, what were my primary energy loss activities? How did I expend my energy? And just go through it, right? Much of it you were already predicting. I knew I was going to have this exchange, blah, blah, blah. Much of it, often unpredictable, as I said. So, watch this. A peer comes into your room, she's clearly upset, she yells at you, maybe even in front of students, and then walks out. Well, what are you going to do with that? Whatever happens, that's energy loss that you're dealing with. How are you going to control for that? How are you going to help yourself to address that challenge? That's what we mean by this energy loss. Now, if you can control it, then obviously it makes sense to control it, right? I mean, why would we allow ourselves to continue to bleed energy and then 3 or 4 years into our project of teaching begin to realize, oh, well, I just don't have the energy to give to this at all. When I talk with coaches, as I often do, and I try and help them, it's inevitable that when you start talking to coaches that are needing to get out, often it's because they're just so fatigued, they're so tired, and they just don't have the energy to do it anymore. And to that degree, we've got to talk about this type of 2 different types of holes in the side of the gas can. Obviously, the things we can control. If we can control those things, we need to control those things. No question about it. I had a teacher that had to admit, the challenge for me is that I love to sleep, so I sleep as late as I can, and then I wake up and I just rush to my classroom to get there. And I realize I am creating my own level of energy loss in that type of loss of discipline or intentionality. I got to start thinking about going to bed 30 minutes earlier so I can get up 30 minutes earlier, so I can get to my classroom a little bit earlier, so that I'm composed and ready, so that when energy loss starts to happen, I'm prepared. I'm ready for it. Makes sense. Of course, the stuff we can't control, and this is the tough one. The stuff we can't control, we've got to learn, and I would underline that word if I'm taking notes now. We got to learn, because it is a learning process. I got to learn to let that stuff go, right? Because it's like that word picture we were talking about before, where I'm picking up rocks and dropping them in my backpack on my way up the hill, and I'm wondering why it's getting so hard for me to get up my hill. I'll give you an example of this. I give this lecture to my students, and I always challenge them. You have got to figure out the stuff you can control and take care of that, because the stuff you can't control, that one's tough. Because you're going to have stuff that happens in the classroom all the time as teachers that you just can't control that stuff. But what about all the stuff you can control? And we had a student who arrived the next day, and she walked in front of all the students. She said, "Well," to Mr. McGee, "Well, Mr. McGee, I did it." And all the students said, "You did what?" "Well, I finally blew up my guy. I finally broke up with him." And of course, everybody was just stunned, because everybody in the classroom knew that she was in a relationship that was not healthy for her, that the young man was not healthy for her, was a lot of energy loss. And everybody wanted to know, whoa, what made you break up? Like, how did you finally get the courage to do it? She said, "You know what, Mr. McGee, it was about that lecture that you gave yesterday about the gas can. And it finally hit me. I'm fighting with my parents at home. I'm no longer happy with my friendships. And the reason is because I have no energy. And the reason I have no energy," and so that's what I said to my guy. She said, "I love you. I really do. I love you. But you're taking a lot of my energy. And it's not in healthy ways. And I have the ability to control that. So I'm breaking up with you because you're bad energy loss for me. And I have to get on with my life. Because if I stay with you, I'm going to just continue to waste my energy, and that is unhealthy." And of course, she said that the guy just looked at her like, wait, what? You can't break up with me because of energy. What are you talking about? And she said, no, energy is the heart of everything. And if I don't have it, then that's why I'm fighting with my parents. And so I turned around, and after I broke up with them, she said, I went and I sat down with my parents, and I said two things. One, I apologize. I'm sorry. The problem and the fighting that has been going on, it actually hasn't been you guys, it's been me. And it hasn't been because I'm mad at you, it's because I didn't have any energy. And so I took care of the energy loss. I've broken up with my guy, and so we're going to have a whole different way of looking at life now. There it is. I think that this is a challenge for us. We have to find ways to deal with the energy loss and ask the simple question, is this something that I can control? And that takes us back to the very first principle of honesty, because I've got to ask that. Because oftentimes we'll say, no, I can't control this, but if we really look at it, we realize most of what happens in our life we can't control. What we can control is how we perceive the stuff that happens in our life. Why did this happen for me? That's the key. Of course, you can't do that if you don't have good energy, right? So that's why it's so important for us to analyze the way that we are expending our energies. How about this? I know lots of teachers, especially those who have been in this business for at least a decade or longer, and they carry deep, deep in their souls pain, suffering from long ago, and they've never been able to set it down. And so for them, it affects them. It affects their life, it affects their health, it affects the way that they deal with students, and because of that, they're never free to experience any joy or peace in their work, as we've defined all those concepts in earlier, right? This is especially, it seems to me, true of people who are involved in extracurricular activities as teachers. If you're a coach, if you're involved in the drama program or whatever, doing all the extracurricular, the yearbook program or whatever at the secondary level, it's compelling the amount of energy loss. And it takes some time to be able to sit down and to actually ask honestly, I'm wasting a lot of energy. And because I'm wasting energy, I don't have as much to give to my students or to those outside of my classroom anymore. So, for example, I'm much quicker to get in a fight, a verbal altercation with a parent or with a school board member, whatever, simply because I just don't have energy. And so I've got to find a way to begin to recapture, to patch some of those holes. And that's what I've got to do. I've got to patch the holes of the things I can control, because I know I'm going to have the things I can't control. It's an inevitability. Right? Master teachers, therefore, realize energy conservation is peace. And that can only happen with the power of discipline, as we'll speak about it next, which will be our next focus topic. So now, as we're coming to the conclusion of this conversation, let's ask it this way. Can I find peace through my epistemological position of fallibilism? And this is a source of a lot of peace, because I can admit I was wrong. I thought I was right, but I was wrong. How about ontologically? Can I find peace in those three areas of the body, the mind, the spirit? I've got to find energy conservation models for all three of those. Picking up, for example, a meditation program, or picking up a yoga set, for example, 2 or 3 times a week, will do wonders for a lot of teachers in terms of energy conservation. I would highly recommend it. Ontologically, that's important, but how about psychologically and sociologically? Can I find the ways in which I'm just bleeding gas, I'm bleeding energy in terms of my fears, my anxieties psychologically, or the dynamics of groups and the ways in which it's not for me growth producing, it's not for me energy helping, positive energy, but rather negative energy. And then finally, obviously, the question of theodicy. I've got to learn how to ask, why did this happen for me, not to me? That's the only way I'm going to ever be able to conserve the energies that I need. Well, I've been reading some passages from Gibran the prophet. How about this one? And a woman spoke, saying, "Tell us of pain." And he said, "Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Even as the stone of the fruit must break, that its heart may stand in the sun, so must you know pain. And could you keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of your life, your pain would not seem less wondrous than your joy. And if you would accept the seasons of your heart, even as you have always accepted the seasons that pass over your fields, and you would watch with serenity through the winters of your grief. Much of your pain is self-chosen. It is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Therefore, trust the physician and drink his remedy in silence and tranquility. For his hand, though heavy and hard, is guided by the tender hand of the unseen. And the cup he brings, though it burn your lips, has been fashioned of the clay which the potter has moistened with his own sacred tears. I want to dare you to be a teacher of peace in your own life, to help in the lives of your students and in those outside of the classroom. Master teachers have the ability to bring peace into the classroom. And think about all of the chaos that our students will arrive in our classroom with. And each day, we see them brand new again with peace. I'm daring, I'm challenging you. Allons is that, let's go, that French word from our Whitman reading of Song of the Open Road. Let's try it. Let's actually see if we can be better at conserving our own peace and sharing peace in our classroom. For your teachers' learning journals, obviously you can predict this one, was a time when you really did know great peace in your room, and what was a time when you didn't? And how did you learn from that? And most importantly, did it lead you to at all begin to understand the importance of discipline, our next topic? Thank you.